took everything I wanted, I took everything I need, all in a day. Or maybe they just want me to leave. And all of the people, and all of the people standing away, waiting for the concrete to break. And all of the people, and all of the people, take it away. You know, maybe you just made me believe. And the days feel a little bit longer now, and the morning's bright. If we escape now and leave this place, I hope heaven has another open door for us when the day is getting late. I saved a little bit of money, I put it in a vault, hidden behind a face on a red room wall. I took everything I wanted, I took everything I need, all in a day. Or maybe they just want me to leave. And all of the people, and all of the people standing away, waiting for the concrete to break. And all of the people, and all of the people, take it away. You know, maybe you just made me believe. Woke up late, still half asleep, with the airport line out in the street. And baby, I know you wanted to stay, but the weekend rush won't let us wait. We woke up late, still half asleep, with the airport line out in the street. And baby, I know you wanted to stay, but the weekend rush won't let us wait. And all of the people, and all of the people standing away, waiting for the concrete to break. And all of the people, and all of the people, take it away. You know, maybe you just made me believe.
I can see you hurting. I've been through the same thing. Baby, don't you worry, I got you. I just wanna know you. Tell me all your secrets. Looking like you need it. 'Cause I got you. I got you. 'Cause I got you. I got you. We can get high, oh na na na. We can get low, oh na na na. Let me be a friend, baby, let me in.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. If you didn't have a chance to download the handout, there are some copies up on the front table here. We'll get started in just a minute or two if you want to come grab a handout, just so that you've got that. This is going to be a little bit more workshop-based. So if you do want to join together with some of the other tables, please do feel free, and we'll get started here in just a moment. Well, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. It's wonderful to be back face-to-face, interacting together. So I am here to chat with you today about effective communication in the workplace. So my name is Dr. Amelia Rigstad. I am an effective communication consultant and coach. So I work with organizations and individuals really to help you communicate more effectively within your places of employment. I have a passion and love for knowledge. Okay? Well, until COVID hit, I turned 40, I got my doctorate degree, I was a university professor for 15 years, and then I kind of hit a midlife crisis and said, what am I going to do with my life? Okay? I still do have that passion and love for knowledge, but through communication and 20 years of education and training. I am also the founder of the Women Empowerment Series, which is a 3-part series which encourages and inspires women to use their voice to initiate change. So I'm really happy to be here with you all today. So what I'm going to be chatting with you today about a lot of different things pertaining to effective communication. And I'm hopeful that it can be a little bit interactive. I know large-scale room, we're still trying to keep separate from everyone, but I'm hopeful that you can have a few different conversations with one another at your tables. So the importance of effective communication. Okay? Talking about the elements of communication and why those are important. Understanding intent in conversations, right? Having that goal of having an affirming, positive intent when we're communicating. Introduce you to linguistics and communication styles. Okay, was anybody able to take that straight talk communication assessment that was described in the description? Few of you? Okay, great. So I am going to talk a little bit about the Straight Talk Communication Assessment and really encourage you all to, if you haven't done so already, to take that assessment. Talk about the differences between communication styles and personality traits, okay, because they're different. Talk about additional factors to effective communication, gender differences, stereotypes. Delve into the common communication challenges that we are faced when we're working in the workplace. Then offer you some tips, some strategies about authentic, confident communication, the importance of language and diplomacy, and really understanding why. Why do people communicate in the way that they do? Okay? Then offer you some strategies and get you on to your final session today before happy hour. So I want you to start to give thought, right? Something here sparks your interest about effective communication, about linguistic styles. On the handout in front of you, and with the people at your tables, I'd like you to just give thought to what does effective communication mean to you? Okay? Create a little bit of a word bubble, if you will. Jot down some thoughts. I'm going to give you a minute or so. And even chat with the rest of the folks at your table. What does effective communication mean to you? Okay, so for me, it's all about being able to practice clear, transparent communication in an environment that I feel safe in doing so. Okay? It's also important to be an active listener. Okay, so jot down some thoughts, and we'll come back and see what you think. Okay, so there were a few of you that had taken the poll within this session as well, and you rated effective communication in your workplace a 3 out of 5. Okay? So average, so a little bit of room for improvement. All right, so anybody, what does effective communication mean to you? Okay? You can call it out, just call it out loud. To the point, okay? What else? When you think about effective communication, what's really important? Understanding how the other person thinks. Okay. Anything else?
Needs to come from the right person.
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
Like if you're giving a message that should be coming from your boss, for example, and you're just being asked to give that message,
Yeah.
it's not going to be
Good, good. Any other thoughts? What does effective communication mean to you?
Allowing for questions and clarification.
Great. Allowing for questions, clarification, and we'll certainly touch base about that today too. All right, so I am a firm believer of creating an effective communication culture really begins with recognizing its importance. Okay, but how do we go about doing that? Okay. Effective communication is so absolutely critical in everything that we do within the workplace, even both personally and professionally. 97% of employees believe that communication impacts everything that they do on a day-to-day basis. So it's absolutely critical that we give thought to communication training, ensuring that there's effective communication amongst your employees and your workplaces. Okay. Effective communication training also solves workplace problems. Okay. A lot of conflict in our places of employment is because of the way people communicate and interact with one another. Effective communication can also assist with job training, recruitment, retention, right? Employee engagement, ensuring that our employees feel that they are valued within the organizations that they work for. Okay? And ultimately, effective communication is going to build and strengthen the relationships within your organizations. So I want to introduce you to the elements of communication. Okay, so like I mentioned, 15 years as a university professor, so bear with me. Some of what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit theoretical, but I offer it to you as just something different to think about, a different perspective per se. So when we're looking at the elements of communication, effective communicators know how to communicate with all three elements simultaneously. All right, so that style is about our way of thinking and communicating. Okay. Our intent is the underlying purpose of our communication. Okay. It's reflected in our tone and our body language. And then content is what is being said, right? That information. Okay. Out of these three, the one that I want you to pay closest attention to is that of intent. Okay, it's the most basic. It's the underlying force behind everything that we do from a communication perspective. So a positive intent will be really noticeable to the people around you, okay, but a negative intent will also be really noticeable. Okay. So I want to share with you, and I'm going to just share some examples here on my notes. So the first one is an affirming intent. When we think about our conversations, we want to have that goal of being able to communicate positively with that affirming intent. It's the open idea, sharing of opinions, sharing of ideas. There are no hidden agendas, okay, when we're looking at using a positive intent. So an example here would be, my goal here is to assure that everyone has an open and honest exchange of opinions. It is not my goal to dictate the outcome. Okay, so we want to have that goal of that positive, affirming intent. The second one is that of controlling, right? The intent here is to persuade others or influence them. It's a way to get them to come around to your idea or your opinion. An example here would be, my goal is to make sure that we hone our marketing message prior to the trade show. We're going to talk today about how to get that done. The third is something that is called defending. Okay, we're fighting for one's position, to defend one's point of view. And then finally is relinquishing. Okay, the intent is to give up control to accommodate the other person. I don't care what we do, let's just resolve this and move on. Okay. So we're here today talking about effective communication, but in order to understand that, we also have to talk about communication styles and intent, and understand the why. Okay, when we're in conversations, the first thing is what people hear. It's that affirming intent. If you start off a conversation from a negative perspective, okay, that relinquishing, that controlling, okay, it's going to set the tone for that conversation. So I want to introduce you to something that is called a linguistic style, if you're not familiar with it. There's a lot of research that has been done by Deborah Tannen, focusing on gender differences, workplace communication. And a linguistic style is a set of culturally learned signals. It's our pattern, the way that we have conversations with one another. Okay? The key with the linguistic style is that we learn these styles at a very young age, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of age on the playground. Okay? From a gender perspective, okay, both boys and girls, they're going to find ways of creating rapport and negotiating status, but they do it quite differently. Girls will tend to play in smaller groups. They may have a singular best friend. They speak really closely to one another. They're trying to negotiate status and build rapport by how close their relationships are. Boys tend to focus on status dimensions. They're going to upplay. Okay? Generally, they will play in larger groups, okay? And they are trying to position themselves one over the other. I always share the example of my son Maverick. He's 6 years old. Note to self, don't ever name your child Maverick. He's absolutely a maverick. Okay, so I will witness him running around on the playground, playing with his cousins or his friends. He's absolutely trying to negotiate or position himself one up from the other boys that he's playing with. If I look at my nieces, it's a little bit different, okay? It's not to say that all boys and girls are comfortable in these play groups, okay? And we also do recognize that gender is a spectrum and people identify with different genders. But for the sake of research, for the sake of my area of expertise, we're looking at boys and girls, okay? So generally speaking, not everybody is comfortable in those play groups, but for the most part, that is, transitions as we grow up into adulthood and carries over into the workplace, okay? So think of linguistic styles, when we're thinking about effective communication, as one factor, and one piece of the overall puzzle. The next thing that I want to chat with you about is understanding communication styles. Okay, and I'm a firm believer, again, that this is critical to the workplace. Not only understanding our own individual communication styles, but also the communication styles of the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, okay? So within the notes within the app, okay, I had posted the link of the Straight Talk Communication Assessment. Okay. Straight Talk is an excellent resource. I have been using it for close to 20 years, okay, and it does look at kind of explaining how you are, what type of communicator you are. Okay. Eric Douglas developed it. The research was done based out of Sacramento, California. And what it looks at is how people view the world differently, right? We all have different opinions, different beliefs, different leadership styles, rather. And if we are viewing the world differently, right, then likely we're communicating differently. And that's what the Straight Talk assessment takes us through. Okay, so I'm going to share with you, and you've got this on your worksheet as well. I'd like you to give thought to these 4 primary communication styles. Okay, so if you had taken the assessment, right, you would answer a series of questions, and it will take your highest score and position you within one of these 4 styles. Okay, so the director, the expressor, the harmonizer, and the thinker. Right? It then takes your 2 highest scores and will position you on a communication matrix. Okay, the assessment is a free tool, and it's an excellent resource that can show you how you can go about communicating more effectively with your peers and your colleagues. Okay. So based on that worksheet, I want you to just kind of scan through it, maybe again have a brief conversation with the folks at your table. Okay. Does any of this resonate with you? Okay. If you look through those lists of characteristics, is there's one of those styles, maybe 2 of those styles, that stand out to you? Okay. Have a little bit of a brief discussion. Maybe highlight, circle ones that thinks that, yes, this does absolutely resonate with me, and then we'll come back and discuss. Okay, let's come back, and I'd love to hear from, maybe let's start off for if somebody was comfortable in sharing your thoughts if you did take the communication style assessment. Anybody willing to kind of share what they thought, if they felt that, yes, absolutely, this resonated, this matches my perception of myself?
I'll share.
Yeah, please, thank you.
So I have a question actually, because when I took it, I came back as a director and also a harmonizer.
Yeah.
An equal
Okay.
And so I'm just kind of looking at what there's, because they're very opposite, in terms of
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things there, and I am very close with a director and an expressor, which is more closely aligned, but kind of 1 point off. So sometimes it depends on the time of day that you took the assessment as well. So I'll have questions of like, well, I'm not so sure if that matches my style, or this is really close, but like you had just said, they're quite opposite. So it can depend on too, if you had a really busy day at work, when did you take that? But did you find that it matched you? Yeah. Okay. 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 And too, I mean, remember that it is also, an assessment, right? And there's a plethora of them out there. And it just gives us, a resource, a tool to consider. Okay. Other thoughts on the director, the expressor, the harmonizer, the thinker? Anybody willing to share? That's fine, okay, but I want you to give thought to, if you didn't get a chance to take the assessment, again, it's a free tool that's available for you, plethora of different information out there. And what is wonderful about this particular tool is that you can then invite your team members to take it. Okay, and then you can start building team profiles within the platform that allows you to see, Joe might be a harmonizer, he works really closely with Sally, but she's a director, and then it will offer you really valuable tips and tricks on how you can communicate more effectively with that person. Okay, so something to consider. There are a ton of different assessments out there, right? So strength finders, DISC assessment, Myers-Briggs, and you've likely taken some of those within your career. Okay? Something that I want you to consider, however, is a lot of those other assessments are based on our personality traits. Okay? Our personality traits, for the most part, are fixed characteristics. Right? We can't change personality traits of the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. Right? If there's somebody in our office or our boss who's a narcissistic leader or has narcissistic qualities, right, we're not going to be able to change that person. We can't change those personality traits. The reason why I'm such a believer in really understanding our communication styles is because we can modify. We can adapt our communication style to communicate more effectively with the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. So we talked about intent, linguistic styles, communication styles. Okay? I wanted to also just offer you additional factors to consider. Okay? So looking at gender differences and stereotypes. Okay? I'm not going to read through this list for you. Obviously, you can read that, but these are, some of the differences, some of the more stereotypical differences that research will focus on. Okay? Men have a lower voice, open body language. Women tend to have higher pitched voices. They'll use more direct eye contact. Men tend to be very factual, give the facts and move on. Women tend to explain a little bit more, provide supporting information. So I offer this to you again just as a factor when we think about effective communication in the workplace and how gender has a potential to play a significant factor. Going off of that, an additional factor that I want you to consider is the roles that stereotypes play or have the potential to play within your places of employment. Okay? Again, these are very much stereotypical or traditional traits that we would see in research. Okay? Masculine, aggressive, females are not. Females are more passive. We're submissive. Right? I know for sure that I'm not submissive. Right? I'm much more on the aggressive side. So I offer again this to you just as a consideration that we're careful in our places of employment, that we're not necessarily pigeonholing men and women into these certain categories and the damage that stereotypes can do in our organizations. So why, right? Why is this important? Okay. It is critical to know and understand your communication style. Okay? And I do encourage you to take that assessment and do your homework. Dig into that and see what type of communicator you are. Okay? Build that understanding. Build the understanding of not only how you communicate, but also the way people around you communicate. Who are the people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis, right? You can do it personally or professionally. Understanding intent in conversations, right? Always try to have that affirming, positive intent. And then, of course, learning to adapt. Again, we can't necessarily change personality traits, but we can build an understanding of how people communicate and then learn to adjust, learn to modify or adapt our communication style so that we can communicate more effectively within the workplace. So I want to talk a little bit about some common communication challenges, okay, that you might be faced with within your organizations. So the first one, giving and receiving feedback. This can be challenging, right? If you're the one providing the feedback on that performance review, or if you're the person receiving it, that can be a tough, challenging conversation. Clarifying objectives, right? Making sure that everybody is on the same page. Understanding when the deadlines are, right? That can cause some challenges. Providing and receiving coaching. Hey, how do we go about doing that if somebody's not willing to listen, right? That can pose some conflict as well. How do we go about handling disagreements amongst our team members, right? We know not everybody gets along in our organizations, so how can effective communication mitigate conflict in the workplace? Okay? Sometimes we have to navigate those power differences. We have to navigate gender differences, right? Maybe it's about working with stakeholders, clients within our organizations. How do we navigate through some of those conversations, right? So we have these common communication challenges that can then lead us to feel a certain way, right? We can get frustrated, angry, maybe we're feeling belittled, we're uncertain, right? We don't have the clarity that we need to do our jobs. So how do we go about balancing diplomatic conversations, right? How do we make sure that our voices are heard, right? How do we shift those power dynamics to ensure that we are effective communicators in the workplace, right? That we're focused on productivity. So I want to share with you, I have 3 different areas. So authenticity and confidence, language and diplomacy, and then understanding why. Why do people communicate the way that they do? So the importance of authenticity, okay? Really want to encourage all of us here today, okay, to be our authentic selves. Okay? Before I get into this, I want to share with you kind of my story and why I feel that authenticity and having the ability to be our authentic selves is really important, both personally and professionally. Okay? So going back 10 years ago, I'm originally from just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I had been dating a guy from Minnesota. That's how I ended up here. So we had gotten engaged, was back home, I was planning the move, kind of getting all of my ducks in a row, from a medical perspective. So went to the doctor, and I had this mole on my forehead. Okay? So my doctor wasn't really concerned, but she said, well, I'm going to send you to a plastic surgeon because it is on your face. Let's see what he says. Okay. So I did, followed the doctor's orders, went to the plastic surgeon, and he's like, well, I don't really think it's anything. Hey, but, it's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do with it. Okay. Well, I said, well, I don't actually need a mole on my head, right? And it was a larger mole. And he was, saying, well, you don't know, it could maybe turn into something, but I don't think it's anything right now, so you don't really have to be worried about anything. Okay? Note to self, always listen to your gut and do what's right for you and be proactive with your health. Because sure enough, I had that mole removed, and at 32 years of age, I was diagnosed with malignant melanoma. Okay? The deadliest form of skin cancer. Hey, goes straight to your organs, right? Okay, I was also getting married in 6 months, okay, and I got that result the day that I was shopping for my wedding dress. Okay. The reason that I share that with you is because I think COVID did a number on all of us in some way, shape, or form. Okay? And it got me thinking, okay, how can I be my authentic self? So leading up to COVID, I had brown hair. I wore it shorter, but it was always over my scar. Okay? And you might not be able to tell right now, but I have a slice in my neck from a skin graft. Okay? The removal was so large that they couldn't just pull the skin. So I do look like I got hit in the head with a hammer. I always wanted to cover it. Right? I was scared. I was embarrassed. I didn't want people staring at that scar. Okay? However, COVID kind of taught me that life is too damn short, right? To either be passionate about something, doing what we want to be doing. So after those first few months of the initial lockdown, when in Minnesota, the hair salons were closed, everything was closed, all we could do was go to Costco and Target. I went to my hairdresser. Now, granted, I went to my hairdresser with 4 inches of gray roots, because that also is what happens when you're in your 40s. You start going gray. If you're lucky like me, that's what happened. Went into my hairdresser and said, cut my hair short, give me a mohawk, make it platinum blonde, and what the hell, throw in some purple. I'm gonna rock this scar, okay? So I encourage you all to be fearlessly authentic, bravely be you. I tell you that because, again, that's my story, but I'm also a firm believer in being an authentic communicator, right? In every way, shape, or form that we can. So be our authentic selves. But it does require vulnerability. It requires us to be transparent. It requires us to have integrity with the people that we're communicating with on a day-to-day basis. So how do we do this? Okay, again, now I'm going to start like a little bit of a broken record because I really want you to spend some time analyzing your communication styles. Know yourself, right? Know how you react in situations. Okay? I can tell you at times I can go from 0 to 60 pretty damn fast. Okay? And I see some head nods, so I know that I'm not alone on that. But that has taken me time to recognize that. Obviously recognize that I can't go from 0 to 60 in a heated conflict conversation in my place of employment, right? So understanding then, how do I navigate through that? Okay? How can I best communicate with the people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis? So it goes back to being an authentic communicator. Okay? The key to that is actively listening, right? Listening to understand, not to respond. Okay, so many times, and I know, again, I'm not the only one that does this, we're in a conversation, you've got the words just sitting on the tip of your tongue, and you want to just spit right back, right? So again, some head nods. But when we do that, we're not actively listening to the person that we're interacting with. Okay? Having confidence. Talk about that again here in a second. Confidence is a very positive trait. Managing our emotions in conversations. Okay, so the number one question that I receive from clients or individuals that I'm working with is, how do I keep my emotions out of my conversations? Okay. I offer the perspective, and something for you to consider is that we don't want to keep our emotions out of our conversations. If we keep our emotions out of our conversations, we're no longer being authentic. Okay? But how do we manage those emotions? right? We have to be responsible for our own feelings, taking responsibility. If I go from 0 to 60 really, really quickly and I say something that I didn't mean to a coworker or my boss, right? I have to be able to manage that. I have to be able to rope that back in and do my due diligence, apologize or what have you in order to move on. The key though is, there's ways for us to manage our emotion, and it does play a role in understanding our communication styles and really knowing how we communicate. Going off of that, okay, confidence, right? Confidence is a trait, and it's a very respectable trait, and it does not equal arrogance, right? Sometimes people will say like, oh, he's just arrogant or she's just arrogant. Well, what if he or she is just confident, right? Know what you're good at. Know the value that you provide to your organizations and act in a way that conveys that to people around you. Okay, it is a very respectable trait. So again, how do we go about being more confident in our conversations? Here we go, broken record. Recognizing those differences in how everyone communicates. Okay? Do your research, spend the time. Even if you don't go through and take the assessment, who is somebody in your organization that kind of gets under your skin? Maybe you do have some conflict with. Write down how he or she communicates. Okay, then how do you communicate? How can you utilize those communication styles to communicate more effectively within your organization? Okay, communication training and that straight talk assessment can help you in your organizations. Okay. Be authentic, but also learn how to adapt. Learn how to modify that communication style. So authenticity and confidence, right? Then language and diplomacy helps with conflict or those challenging conversations. Conversations, communication was never meant to be one-sided, right? It's a two-way dialogue. So think of it from the perspective of a volleyball game or a tennis match, right? You're volleying back and forth. Being able to offer clarification. Do you have any questions? Being able to have that two-way conversation. Being cautious of our word choice, right? Because our language does matter. Our words matter, right? And if we say something that we shouldn't have, being able to step back and take ownership of that and do what we need to do to make things right. But again, going back to that authentic conversations, being transparent, right? Being truthful. Okay? We're constantly invited to be ourselves in any given situation, right? Go into that meeting, just be yourself, right? So be transparent. Have those honest, truthful conversations. But we also want to be diplomatic, right, in the manner that we do that. So authenticity and confidence, language and diplomacy, and then really understanding why, right? Why do people communicate in the way that they do? Okay. Now, if COVID hasn't taught us anything, it is that people are generally in self-protection mode. Okay. And we do have to be careful, right? We don't know what everybody is going through on any given day. Okay, stress, anxiety, COVID, kids, husbands, wives, unhappiness can bring out the worst in humans. But again, if we can start understanding how not only we communicate, but how the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis communicate, right? We can learn to be more effective communicators, both personally and professionally. Okay? And then, of course, those factors that I had talked about, personality traits, gender differences, stereotypes, the linguistics, the communication styles, that all plays a role in understanding how people communicate differently. So the key to tough conversations is how do we go about handling those to produce a better outcome? Okay? How do we go about doing that? So I want to offer you a couple different strategies and then some tips that you could take back to your workplace. So now these two strategies do refer back to that straight talk communication strategy, or communication assessment rather. And the first strategy is all about stepping out. Okay? So if we use this strategy, this is where we are tailoring our specific style. Okay, so for me, I am an expressor, right? If I am chatting with somebody who is a harmonizer, I would then try to tailor my style to communicate more effectively with that harmonizer or that thinker. And it really does signify that conscious shift to communicating with somebody that has a different style than yours. Okay, that's what's beautiful about that assessment and how that can help you in your workplace, because if you have your team take the assessment, you can then start plotting out on this grid how people communicate, how they can communicate more effectively with one another. The second strategy, okay, is about becoming a well-rounded communicator, right? So for me, my lowest score is that of a thinker. Okay? So I'm going to work hard on being more of a well-rounded communicator, kind of highlighting on some of those characteristics that a thinker has. So this isn't tailored to another individual. This is all about working on yourself. Okay, so 2 strategies: stepping out, tailored to a specific individual, and then strategy 2, becoming a more well-rounded communicator. So some tips for dealing with conflict and challenging conversations. Okay? So again, learning your team members' communication styles. Really, really important and an excellent tool when we're thinking about increasing effective communication in the workplace. Okay. The second tip that I offer you is all about planning our communication or planning our conversation. And I don't mean this verbatim, okay, but if you are faced with somebody within your organization that maybe you don't necessarily get along with, or there's always some kind of conflict, when you're preparing to go into that conversation, try to plan it out a little bit. Okay? Jot down some bullet points. Okay? Reflect on those bullet points when you're in that meeting so you're confident that you're getting your point across, right? You're articulating exactly what it is that you want to say. Because when we do that, that also helps us to be more confident, right, in that situation. Okay? Changing our mindset also can be a significant factor, or something to consider when we're in these challenging conversations, right? We get bear down with the negativity. Okay? We're fearful going into some of those challenging conversations. What if we just shifted our mindset a little bit and tried to think more positive, right? What would that do? Right? We go back to focusing on that affirming positive intent in our conversations. Okay? Ask questions, clarify if needed, right? Sometimes we just feel like we can't ask questions, okay? But we can ask questions. Okay? If we need clarity on something, we need to feel comfortable enough to be able to ask for clarity, right? On the other way around, if we're getting a sense that somebody's not understanding what we're saying, again, practicing that two-way dialogue, right? Do you understand? Do you have any questions? Okay? Building upon that. Practice our active listening. Okay? And this is really, really key. I'm sure all of us in the room think that we're okay listeners, and we're probably not, right? It does take time, it takes practice, and we have to make a conscious effort that we are actually listening, right? Again, I want you to write this down. Listening to understand, not to reply. Okay? That is the key to active listening. Being cautious of our language. Okay? Our words do matter, okay, when we're having conversations. Manage our emotions, okay, but don't disregard them, right? Figure out kind of, that sticky spot for you, especially in conflict. Okay? It is okay if we get heated. Okay? Are we being diplomatic about that? It's okay if our body reacts and we start crying. Own it. Okay? We shouldn't be penalized for getting upset in conversations, right? That is us being our authentic selves, and that's really key. Attempt to understand where the other person is coming from. Hey, that old saying of, looking at the person, putting on the same shoes, the different shoes, whatever that one is, being able to understand how other people are all going through different things. And then being okay with silence and reflection in some of those tough, challenging conversations. Okay? We don't always have to respond right away, right? That's something that I learned because I know that I can go from 0 to 60 pretty quick. I tend to sit and reflect. Okay? And I'll just say, hey, you know what? I need a moment. Okay? I'm collecting my thoughts. I'll respond here in a second. Okay? So being okay with silence and reflection is also key. So some key takeaways that I want to leave with you today. If you are interested in the deck, feel free to send me a message or an email, and I'd be happy to send it your way. Effective communication training, understanding its importance, is absolutely critical in the workplace, okay? Especially if your organization is still in that transition mode, which so many organizations are, right? Some are back face-to-face, some are still completely remote, some are hybrid, right? We've got team meetings with half of our staff at home and half in the office. That is going to cause problems, okay? And communication training can help that. Building an understanding of communication solves those workplace problems. Having that understanding of how people communicate differently, right? Those linguistic styles, the communication styles, understanding that our personalities, right, are generally fixed characteristics. We can't change that, but we can modify and adapt our communication styles in order to be more effective, impactful communicators. Okay? Being able to recognize that if we delve into communication challenges, right, by looking at our styles, okay, we can start to communicate more effectively with one another in the workplace. Being authentic, okay? Being fearlessly authentic, bravely be you. Okay, that might just be my next tattoo, okay? And then, of course, strategies for dealing with conflict, understanding the importance of intent in conversations can always help to mitigate miscommunication in the workplace. Okay. So thank you so much for your time here today, for coming and learning about communication styles. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message on the app, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. So thank you. Any questions? And if not too, you can come and pop by after as well. Yes?
I've been sitting here in front of my communication when you say 0 to 60 is my response in emails, not physical communication.
Yeah.
It's a little more difficult when I think about being fearless and your authentic self.
Yeah.
And
So tell me a little bit about maybe how you would react to something. Like, what are you reacting to with something?
Friday, yeah. No, just that snapback email that you can't get, and then 10 minutes later, okay, I'm like kind of apologizing or
Yeah.
whatever, because I realize across that whole wrong way. And I guess I'm trying to think about your messages.
Yeah. So that's a really great question.
Textbook and female or
So I would say, and what was your name? Molly, nice to meet you, Molly. So I would encourage you to, and almost as silly as it sounds, like we get trapped in our emails and having to respond quickly, especially if it's a Friday afternoon, you're like, I don't want another email, I want to go enjoy my weekend. Okay, well, do you really have to respond on that Friday, right? Could it wait until Monday, right? There's something to be said about managing our email too, but it does take time again also, right? Like of going through and rereading that email a couple times before we hit send. Okay.
right.
Another, and I have to just think of it for a second, the title of the Google Chrome plugin. Okay? It does align more so with women, and I explain this in my Women Empowerment series, but it's a Google Chrome plugin called Just Sorry. Okay, but it is an excellent tool from an email perspective because it catches the way we write our emails. Okay, it will help you to remove the justs It will help you to remove the I thinks instead of I know. And that just, when you were talking, just made me think about that, to offer that tip for you as well. So it's a Google Chrome plugin called I'm Sorry, or I'm Just Sorry.
Well, and then speaking of, just emails and talking about how do you, the forward, our coworkers, you're sending emails out, how they receive and how they communicate.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like so challenged now by thinking of my audience.
Right. Yeah.
And not just like a one-on-one, which a lot of us definitely helps with.
Absolutely.
Any, like, tips on that, I guess.
Like from an audience perspective, like who you're communicating to, or could you try to clarify your question a little bit?
I get, no, it's just this random plug in my head.
Okay, well, why don't we chat after maybe?
It's just hard when you got 40 people that you're trying to, like, I got feedback from a person saying it's too frou-frou-y, it's, not enough information, it makes me feel happy, it's like, how do you,
Yeah.
is there a goal point, a middle point, do you think?
Yeah, I think you need to take one of our communication training courses. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. Happy to chat with you. If you want to pop up and ask any questions, please feel free, and please connect. I'd love to keep our conversations going. Thank you.
Baby, you're electric light. Baby, you're electric. Yeah, it's over. I'm circling these vouchers, got me praying and this hunger. I'm feeling something rotten. Last time I saw you, said what's up and push right through. Then I tried to catch you, but we're always on the move. And now it's sober. Symptoms of the culture, and the night ain't getting younger. That's cause around the corner. Feeling kinda tilted, and I'm pouring out the truth. Just fading out these talkers, 'cause now all I want is you. And saying, come over here, sit next to me. You can see where things go naturally. Just say the word and I'll part the sea. Just come over here and sit next to me. Take you Well, I ain't frontin' my intention. Got your man outlined in chalk. It's a midnight intervention. Got no plans to make it stop. Last time I saw you, said you wanna keep it light. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not trying to change your mind. It's alright. Ooh, it's alright. Ooh, yeah. Come over here and sit next to me. You can see where things go naturally. Just say the word and I'll part the sea. Just come over here and sit next to me. I'll take you It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. So come over here and sit next to me.